Hey guys, it's Danny. Exciting video once again. Today we're gonna be trying out one of the rePotme medias. So many of you have suggested that I do give their media a go because you have been so pleased with it. So it's really exciting, particularly because you might already know I don't have much success with the local media. I needed to order something anyway. I needed to find something better quality because even though I love leca, I love semi-hydroponics, some orchids absolutely do not. Do you remember the Orchiata? She absolutely refuses to grow well in leca, and look at her now. I put her in Sphagnum Moss. It is a transitional medium and just look at her. She's thriving. So I have to face it. I cannot grow everything in leca and in semi-hydroponics, at least in my area. So in the end, it doesn't really matter what I like and what I want. I kind of have to go with what the orchid likes. Now, when it comes to media, especially organic media, it is such a difference to work with quality products. I actually have a video that I made a year or two ago in which I was telling you what organic alternatives or products I find better quality. There are different types of bark, and in the end, I did work with kiwi bark. And there's just such an enormous difference between the average, let's say, pine bark, which is pretty cheap, pretty accessible on the market, and something which is a little bit more costly, yes, but there's just such a difference. In the past year, I did discover such a difference between the sphagnum moss as well. In the past, I used chili moss. Now I am just on pure sphagnum moss. And again, there is just such a difference in behavior, in the way it lasts, of course. You cannot expect organic media to last forever. That's how it is, but at least if you're gonna pot your orchids in something organic which will need replacing at some point, might as well try to make it as long-term as possible, right? And this brings us to today's medium. This is the Oncidium Imperial mix. One of the things rePotme are really known for is their mixes because they hand blend them. And the ingredients that they use, well, they're quite intriguing. So let's just take a look on the website, see what this mix contains, why it is so good for Oncidium. So I will share with you down in the description the link towards the product and also the links to rePotme. They're not affiliate links or anything. I'm also going to share down below the video that I talked about. Let's see what we have in this Oncidium Imperial blend. We have small Orchiata Monterey pine bark. Now, Orchiata is something I didn't work with, but it is actually the equivalent of kiwi bark. Kiwi bark, it's not bark from kiwi trees or anything, it's just a name. They are all pine barks, but it depends how you prepare them. So we have the Orchiata, which I'm excited to try out. I've never worked with it. I worked with kiwi bark and I absolutely loved it, but the two should be very, very similar. Then we have Turfis, which again is something I didn't work with, but it is a pretty common medium. And then we have small black lava rock. Lava rock is something that I did use with my orchids in the past, but what I used was something designed for barbecues because I couldn't really find the medium itself. This was actually a long time ago. So on paper, it actually looks pretty good. You can see that the size of the bark is not really big. This is an Oncidium designed mix, but of course it can be used with other fine rooted orchids. It is actually designed to just make sure the roots do touch the medium, but at the same time it is airy and well draining. And I'm pretty sure you can use something like this with seedlings and pretty much anything that has fine roots. So I have here a sample of the Oncidium Imperial mix. If I turn out that I like it, I will actually get more. This is a smaller bag, but there are options for bigger bags as well. And here we have the little queen, the Orchiata Lava Burst, which I tried for a year or so to grow in semi-hydro and leca, and she hated it. I placed her in Sphagnum Moss. She loves it. The problem is, when you combine sphagnum moss with very high humidity, such as a self-watering pot, you will get algae at the top. Not my thing. I love moss, specifically the New Zealand sphagnum moss, but not in self-watering. It doesn't look pleasing. But I do really want to repot this orchid in something else, and I'm sure that an organic medium will be to its liking. I will be potting it in a transparent pot, and we will talk about these pots later. They are the slotted pots, which again are something rePotme are known for. And as you can see, they do have slits, which is wonderful. It doesn't require me to poke holes in it. We will have a separate video about these as well, but I will go for a transparent pot, and I think I will not go for self-watering with this one because there is a drawback to bark generally, whatever type of bark. Being that it's not fine, it's also not very wicking. So even if I put a reservoir and a wick, the bark itself will not wick the water. It's just not that type of material. So I think I will go for a decorative container made out of clay, something pretty that I picked up at my flower shop. The good thing is I will totally see the roots and how everything is evolving, and we can make updates to see the roots, how they react to the medium through this pot. Bad side is I cannot use self-watering. I will need to water a little bit more frequent, but as I was saying, that's what I have to do for some orchids. Not everything can go my way. So let's go ahead and remove this orchid from the pot, and let's take a look at the root system, because when I put it here, it did not have any roots. Nothing to brag about, to be honest. So I'm curious how the roots developed. Now, as much as I love these lechuza pots, nothing is perfect, and actually wanting for something to do everything, it's pretty much impossible. The downside with these pots, even though they're just so lovely, is that you cannot really squeeze them. So when you're gonna pull out an orchid, you'll pretty much have to go on the sides, just like you would with a clay pot, if you guys are acquainted with those, because this is a very hard plastic. So that's the downside of a lechuza pot, since we're here. So what I will try to do is go underneath the orchid. This is moss, and it's really easy for me to just, oh my god, oh my goodness, oh look at this. I was not expecting this. So let's see if the orchid wants to come out. Kinda. Wow, you guys. This orchid did not have roots. Do you remember, when did I post the video with the lechuza pots? I will put a screenshot on the screen right now. Oh my goodness, look at that. And this medium is not compacted at all. This is New Zealand Sphagnum Moss, you guys. It is from Best Grow, and I see this particular brand everywhere in videos. You can find it in multiple places around the world. Here in Europe, I purchased it from Orchid Garden, and it's just, look at this medium. Look how fluffy it is, and it's sphagnum moss and not at all compacted. This medium will compact with the quantity of roots in time, but wow. If only it would have a pretty surface. It's okay though. I do have orchids growing in this medium, just not in self-watering. It's just something I don't prefer, but the medium itself, the moss itself, it's absolutely incredible. Look at this. And for 2 years, I could not get roots on this orchid. One thing you can do though with sphagnum moss, if you don't want to have this messy algae situation at the top, you could go and get live sphagnum moss or any other live moss, put it on the top, and you can definitely grow something like this in a self-watering container. The orchid loves it if it is a high moisture orchid, and you can see this is pure sphagnum moss. This was self-watering. It was wet all the time, you guys, and nothing bad happened. So if you can get your hands on some live moss, I don't think I can, I will try though. Definitely go for live moss at the top with a self-watering pot and sphagnum moss underneath with a little bit of perlite, but definitely the New Zealand sphagnum moss, which is this fluffy moss, and I think it will be fantastic. The algae accumulations at the top, they really didn't do great with my orchid. I do see a few roots that appear to have been suffocated by the algae, so it's not ideal for my situation at least. Algae are actually not like moss, they can be suffocating. Therefore, I cannot really leave this go on. About the removal of moss, being that this moss is just so fluffy and just, it's a good quality moss, it's not very hard to remove it from the root system. Even with something as fine rooted as this, I don't really have much issues because the roots themselves don't really attach to moss. It's not a flat surface, it is pretty much a porous surface, and if it's porous, the roots don't really attach that much. Of course, if you get a lot more roots than this, it can become complicated, but I do have a video on how to remove sphagnum moss successfully and without too much damage from orchid roots. But as you can see, even in this case, I can remove the moss pretty easily for the main part, and this is really just due to the moss. Chili moss, in my experience, did not behave as good as this. So there we have it. One more thing that contributes is how you pot the orchid. I don't suggest you ever pack and press down on the moss too bad, because this will make everything so much harder. When I put this orchid in moss, it was just the fluffiest thing. I didn't even push too much. This moss is naturally fluffy, it doesn't compact, again, unlike chili moss, so that helps. There we have it though, without tweezers or anything. I removed all of this moss without damaging anything. Let me just get you in a little closer so you can see the damage that I'm talking about. You can see these would have been new root tips. They were just suffocated by those algae. Look at this. So it's not just algae deposits which are unsightly, it's actually suffocation of the root tips, particularly on something as fine rooted as this. Look at this. This was on the top, you can see the shape of it. This was on the top and the root tip was suffocated by the algae. So algae, even if they're not detrimental to orchids, excessive amounts can actually do some damage. I'd rather not have it, so that's why I really didn't want to let this orchid stay in the moss in the self-watering pot. It really didn't look good as well, but you can see it didn't do good for the plant either. Alrighty, so I will clean up my little table here and I will come back when I'm done. Alrighty, so I'm done with cleaning my orchid and I'm just so impressed with the root system. Now let's open this bag. As you can see, this is a sealed bag, so I'm not gonna rip it, although I could. I'm just going to cut the top. And I do have a Ziploc here, so I can seal this bag off again. And I'm curious about the smell. One of the things that I really loved about the kiwi bark that I used a lot of years ago was the smell. It just smelled different than the typical bark. So I'm curious about this one. Let me see. Oh, it smells the same. It has a coniferous sap type of fragrance to it, which, you know, makes sense because this is pine bark, but the pine bark you find on the market doesn't really smell as good as this, particularly the Compa one. That one smells like dust or something. This has that smell. Oh, I really love the smell. Now, with this type of bark, some people can get up to 5 years, which is pretty great. So even though it's organic, 5 years, it's a lot of time. So I'm hoping I can get 5 years as well. Let's just take a closer look at the composition. We have the pine, which I detect. We have the lava rock, which I hope you can see here. And this is the turfus. Where did you go? Here he is. So indeed, it looks like what it's supposed to be. It smells amazing and it looks amazing, and I have to say I'm pretty excited. I have not worked with bark in a while. Yes, I did pot my paths in bark, but it's not the same thing. You might already know I'm not okay with the mixes that I have here, but here we are potting something in a transparent pot with bark. This is reminiscent of my balcony days. Who remember those days? If you guys are on my channel ever since then, let me know in the description below. I want to know. So with bark and with organic media, we need to first put a layer on the bottom. And you know what? These pots don't have holes, therefore you will not have medium just going through the holes. There are slits. It is not the time to talk about these pots right now, but I'm just noticing some features as well. So let's put a layer on the bottom. This will prevent the roots going through the slits or maybe sitting in the water. Presumably you're gonna have this on a dish or in a decorative container. They will eventually go there, but if they're not acquainted to that much level of humidity, they can rot off, they can die off. You know what they say, orchids don't like wet feet? Well, they will eventually grow to like it. Let's put it like that. My orchid though, she has been in self-watering, she loves high moisture, so this is not a problem. However, we need to do a proper bark repotting, right? And the proper way to do it with new orchids is by putting a layer on the bottom to prevent the rotting of roots which are not adjusted to high levels of moisture. So as with any repotting, I'm going to keep my orchid in place. I'm going to put the new growth towards the center, so I gain a lot of times worth of growth towards the middle of the pot. The old growth, which usually doesn't produce new growth, will be on the side of the pot. We won't have new growth here, so we can put it on the side and leave space and room for the new growth. And now let's add medium, which actually feels super nice because it flows down due to the size of the bark pieces. Okay, one thing that I'm noticing with this medium is that you will make a little bit of a mess around the pot, and being that it is just so tiny, it's hard to pick up. So if you can put a napkin or something underneath that you can easily take and dump the rest of the medium inside the pot, that would be great. Because I'm kind of losing medium right now and I don't like it, and it's hard to pick up because it's just so tiny. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a napkin. There we have it. I really don't want to waste this medium, to be fully honest. The fact that the particles are small allows me to just tap on the side of the pot and everything just goes down. You can see I don't have big air pockets. If there are a few air pockets, that's absolutely fine. This is an epiphytic orchid, but it likes very high humidity, so I don't want to leave super big gaps. It is impossible though, because this medium is pretty fine. And when I say fine, I don't really mean super fine, but compared to the bigger pieces that you can find in bark mixes, it is quite fine. So I don't need to push down, I don't need to compact anything. This medium cannot be compacted. It is a solid material, not like moss. And I think I am pretty good to go. So now here's where the napkin comes into place. Ta-da! And I did not waste anything, except the things that I wasted at the beginning. And here is my decorative container, and this is so nostalgic like you would not believe, because this is how I was growing my orchids 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I do have a video on decorative pots and how to pick a proper decorative pot for your orchid pot. Check it down below. Mind you, it is an older video. I might sound a little bit more shy, a little bit more different, I don't know, but it's orchid childhood, to be honest. So the thing you are looking for is to have a gap in between the orchid pot and the decorative pot. If it makes a perfect seal, it can get suffocated, and with bark medium, it's not advisable. With leca, and especially in a warm environment, not a problem. With organic media though, it can be slightly problematic, so it's good to have ventilation. The orchid pot has slits, as you saw, and it will continue to aerate the medium and breathe, but you do need to provide this gap. So now let us water my orchid. And as a first watering, I like to soak. It doesn't mean I will soak the pot every time I water. I will see how it goes, because it is a fine medium. And even though bark doesn't really retain that much water, we do have all of those other elements inside. So I'll see how it behaves. But now I want to soak it because it is the very first time that I use the medium. Pretty much we need to get the medium adjusted to the water a little bit. And you will notice that it floats a little bit. It's absolutely normal. As I was saying, bark doesn't really retain water. Okay, so I'll be back in about 10 minutes or so. Alrighty, so it's time to pull out my orchid. It has been soaking for quite a while, and as you can see, the water is brown. This is absolutely normal because we have a lot of bark particles. Also some tannin. It's absolutely normal to have browny water, especially with your first watering. Oops. So I'm gonna go ahead and dump this one, and I'll come back when I'm done. One more thing that I did was to run water through the pot just to eliminate all of those dusty particles. Again, with bark, you'll always have some dust particles, just like with leca. I don't like to rinse or soak the bark prior to me using it or anything, because those particles just flow away when you rinse the pot. And also, if you have a few particles inside, that's okay. You can see the water now is clear. So just with the rinse, they usually go away. No need to actually wash the bark like we wash the leca. And here is my orchid. Sadly, you cannot see just yet through the pot because there is a little bit of condensation, but we can actually see the roots here and there, and yeah, curious to see how it will perform. It was a really great experience, and for fine rooted orchids, it is actually pretty great medium. It goes down very easy. It smells great, very reminiscent of the balcony days, very nostalgic, yes. Pretty happy to have it, and so surprised about how this orchid performed in the organic medium as opposed to the leca. So definitely there was a very big difference there. It did not like the properties of leca. So what to do? I'm not gonna put it in leca anymore. And I do believe that the Sphagnum Moss and self-watering system can work, except for that algae accumulation, which is inevitable. If you can put a different type of moss on the top, which will prevent algae from forming, I think it's doable, that one as well. So I will play around with the mix a bit with other orchids as well. I do have some other orchids which could do with a better mix. And of course, I shall keep you up to date. You have all of the links that I talked about in the description below. And with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. And you know the drill, like or dislike this video below, subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, tutorials, Q&As, repottings, and other fun orchid subjects. If you like YouTube to notify you whenever I upload a new video, just turn on notifications for my channel. And if you're curious about my other setups, the leca, the Sphagnum Moss, everything that I currently use in my growth space, you can find it in the description. Just expand it and you'll learn everything you want to know. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!